Okay, while we're waiting for the online questions to come, Doctor, is that what? I have questions here for you. The first question that came in said, can you please touch on financial investment for returns as regards agriculture? The benefits, which investment do you know, and many things. Okay. So can you please touch on financial investment for returns as regards agriculture?
I think he didn't. The person that wrote that question is actually referring to the farm crowdies of this world, digital agriculture, where they tell you to invest. If you invest 1 million, we're going to give you, you've seen as high as 40%, 35%, 25%. They tell you, oh, if you invest in the season, we'll give you as high as 25% returns on your investment or 40% returns on your investment. I want us to be very careful here. If you take my example, the example of cassava, it takes 11 months when you plant cassava. It takes 11 months. So let's assume I am investing your money in cassava, and I've asked you to give me money to do cassava farming. Now, I've invested on 1 hectare or acre farmland. Now, it's going to take me 11 months to think of harvesting. Remember, I must have an off-taker to buy my cassava. If I have an off-taker, remember, I have not added value because they are going to buy my tuber crop. Buying your tuber crop does not guarantee that kind of returns that we're talking about. But if we're going to proceed to produce and process garri, we're going to produce garri, it will take us another, when we harvest, we process into garri, we will dry it. It will take us you add another 3 to 4 months. It means in 1 year, we have not started making money. We have actually not started making money. The only way I will guarantee that if you give me 1 million, I will give you 40%, is if I tell you, give me 1 million and give me 4-year moratorium. Give me 1 million and give me 4 years. The 4 years I'm going to plant palm trees. And the 5th year we will start harvesting. So the 5th year I will start paying you back. And remember, the palm tree has a 45-year gestation cycle. So it means that we're going to end for 45 years. So if I tell you the truth, give me 1 million, wait for 4 years, and we will end, we will take it as a retirement plan. That's when. So we should be very careful when we are throwing our investment into the digital space. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Doctor. Wow. Second question here says, how can we preserve groundnuts? And for how long can this be preserved? Is the shaft of the groundnut good for feeding pigs? Pests in dry shaft? Are there pests in dry shaft? Do they affect pigs? If they do, how?
So your question again, you're moving away from the upstream value chain, which is planting of groundnuts. Remember when we look at, so I believe they will share the slide. So when you look at the export potentials of Nigeria, you're not going to see groundnuts there. You're also not going to see groundnut oil. Remember, Nigeria used to be known for groundnuts, and Nigeria used to be known for groundnut oil. Now, our ladies, when they go to the market, what they see in the market is not groundnut oil. What they see is bleached palm oil. That vegetable oil you're seeing is actually bleached oil. So back to your question of groundnuts. You've moved away from planting groundnuts, and you're looking at processing groundnuts. Now, when you process groundnuts, you're going to process it. You use the same way you process coconut. where you make your coconut oil. You have the cold press and you have the hot press. So when you process groundnuts, you're going to take out the oil. The oil you're taking out is very rich and very expensive. It is called the groundnut oil. Now, if you're from the north, if you've ever taken kuli is the residue from groundnuts. When you take out the oil, you have the shaft. The shaft is either burnt, dried, and processed as kuli. But that dry part that you're talking about, you can actually process it as feed for animal feed. You can actually take it and add it as what? Add your cassava, add your to make your pig meal. So again, how do you process it? Processing cassava comes with, today, in those days we used to use the solar, the sun. But today we now have solar panels. Nigerians are actually producing dryers. So we have indigenous dryers that in a closed circuit you can actually what? Dry you can dry the groundnut. But the truth about the question you ask is that you need to go back and learn. This question you're asking, you cannot get answers from me directly. You need to go back and research the groundnut. You need to go to the market and ask questions. You need to go to Edo market first. Go to where the groundnut hub and see what those malams are doing with groundnuts. You need to go back and ask questions. Start from the market. Then get back to see whether there's an opportunity for you to play in that space. So you can also reach me. You can also reach me because I teach agribusiness in Lagos Business School, and I run a course that we can actually open your eyes to more to that sector. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. There's another question here that I would like you to look. Well, I'll be part of those who said, who can teach and mentor us in agribusiness to avoid these losses? I guess that question is very obvious.
So that question is, who can teach? So, there's a price. There's this song that says, no pain, no gain. No pain, no gain. So there's a price to be paid for knowledge. In order to learn, you need to do what? Prepare yourself. Just like you went through the 5 years or 4 years learning agriculture. By the time you come out, you realize that what they taught you in school is different from what you're going to meet on ground. So you now need to learn the business of what? Agribusiness or the business of farming. So you need to come to class. The good news is that there are many schools. Olawale here was my student in the business school, and I think I have pastor here who also passed through the course. So please go to LBS website and find out about the LBS agribusiness. It is currently the only course that has a grant of about 50%. So if you come on that program, you're going to meet mentors, you're going to engage with the stakeholders, the new kind of farmers that we're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. I think this is the last question we can take. Can't see this in writing. So you mentioned about preservation of beans and crayfish. What is the acceptable standard to preserve these foods? Are there alternatives applicable by our subsistent farmers who actually produce and process these foods before they're taken to the market?
So currently we are talking about, in the last one, we've been talking about food security, food safety, ethics in agriculture. There are no standards. No standards. If you've ever visited Kenya, you discover that you won't find a meat seller. The same when you, on Broad Street in Lagos, you will see this meat seller carrying meat on his breast, moving around with all kinds of flies, must have perched the meat. And you see smart ladies touching the meat and pricing the meat. You won't find that kind of thing in Kenya. There are standards. There are rules. You cannot just carry meat in the open. Meat must be preserved, must be in a show glass, and people will buy directly from that. So currently, that question you asked, there are no standards. Anything goes in this market. I call the market an unstructured market. The market is waiting for standards. The market is waiting for certification. So if you're going to export things out of Nigeria, I give us an example. If you're going to export maize, if you're going to export groundnuts, that's when you will realize that they've been feeding us with poison. Because your maize and groundnut will not fly. By the time they test it, they will tell you that it is rich in aflatoxin. And aflatoxin is one carcinogenic substance that we take in little by little. So you can't take it out of the country because they know they will test it. So the question then is, who do we run to? That's why we are talking to ourselves. That the players in this space need to begin to address the government to say, we need standards. People will not just wake up and begin to sell anything to the public. Take, for example, your chicken that you eat. You know you have two categories, frozen chicken and your chicken from your farm. So if you look at the frozen chicken, the ones that are coming from the neighboring countries, the question is, how do they bring those chicken in? They spend 3 days bringing them in without a refrigerated truck. So how come they don't decay? So they coat them with formaldehyde. They coat the chicken. Formaldehyde is the chemical you use to embalm corpse. So they coat them with formaldehyde. If you've ever visited Otta Market in the morning, you will see them using rag to clean the chicken. So what they are cleaning is a chemical that they use in preserving to be able to bring these things in. So these are issues. There are no standards. Currently, there are no standards. We don't know what we are eating. If you tell the lady to go to the market to buy palm oil, now challenge the palm oil seller that this thing you are selling, how come the color is different? You have 10 women selling palm oil. They have 10 different colors. Challenge the women and say, look, what you're selling is not the real one. What you will hear is that you want the real one. They'll bring the real one. They'll tell you what is expensive.
Thank you, doctor. This is very scary. It's indeed very scary. Thank you, doctor. We've run out of time. We can't take any more questions. I am petrified. What